We do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on experience. Failure is instructive. The person who really thinks learns quite as much from his failures as from his successes. Give the pupils something to do, not something to learn. And the doing is of such a nature as to demand thinking. Learning naturally results. Collateral learning in the way of formation of enduring attitudes, of likes and dislikes, may be and often is much more important than the spelling lesson or lesson in geography or history that is learned. We only think when confronted with a problem. Every great advance in science has issued from a new audacity of imagination. If we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow. 40 years spent in wandering in a wilderness like that of the present is not a sad fate unless one attempts to make himself believe that the wilderness is after all itself the promised land. There's all the difference in the world between having something to say and having to say something. The deepest urge in human nature is the desire to be important. In a sense, the mind of savage peoples is an effect, rather than a cause, of their backward institutions. Insecurity cuts deeper and extends more widely than bare unemployment. Fear of loss of work, dread of the oncoming of old age, create anxiety and eat into self-respect in a way that impairs personal dignity. Like the soil, mind is fertilized while it lies fallow, until a new burst of bloom ensues. The ultimate function of literature is to appreciate the world, sometimes indignantly, sometimes sorrowfully, but best of all to praise when it is luckily possible. Expertness of taste is at once the result and reward of constant exercise of thinking. Nothing is more tragic than failure to discover one's true business in life, or to find that one has drifted or been forced by circumstance into an uncongenial calling. Art is the most effective mode of communications that exists. I believe that the school must represent life as real and vital to the child as that which he carries on in the home, in the neighborhood, or on the playground. The very essence of civilized culture is that we deliberately erect monuments and memorials, lest we forget. Most notable distinction between living and inanimate beings is that the former maintain themselves by renewal. The most important attitude that can be formed is that of desire to go on learning. The conception that growth and progress are just approximations to a final and changing goal is the last infirmity of the mind in its transition from a static to a dynamic understanding of life. Thinking and feeling that have to do with action in association with others is as much a social mode of behavior as is the most overt cooperative or hostile act. A problem well put is half solved. Leonardo virtually announced the birth of the method of modern science when he said that true knowledge begins with opinion. No words are oftener on our lips than thinking and thought. So profuse and varied, indeed, is our use of these words that it is not easy to define just what we mean by them. The educational process has no end beyond itself. It is its own end. New inventions, new machines, new methods of transportation and intercourse are making over the whole scene of action year by year. It is an absolute impossibility to educate the child for any fixed station in life. Arriving at one goal is the starting point to another. Thinking is not a case of spontaneous combustion. It does not occur just on general principles. Except in dealing with commonplaces and catchphrases, one has to assimilate, imaginatively, something of another's experience in order to tell him intelligently of one's own experience. The two limits of every unit of thinking are a perplexed, troubled, or confused situation at the beginning, and a cleared up, unified, resolved situation at the close. not perfection as a final goal, but the ever-enduring process of perfecting, maturing, refining is the aim of living. The local is the only universal upon that all art builds. Never let fear define who you are, and never let where you came from determine where you are going. We may lead a horse to water we cannot make him drink, and that while we can shut a man up in a penitentiary, we cannot make him penitent. To find out what one is fitted to do, and to secure an opportunity to do it, is the key to happiness. The good man is the man who, no matter how morally unworthy he has been, is moving to become better. It is mere ignorance that leads them to the supposition that connection of art and aesthetic perception with experience signifies a lowering of their significance and dignity. To me, faith means not worrying. Education is a social process. Education is growth. Education is not preparation for life, but is life itself. A problem well defined is a problem half solved. The only way to abolish war is to make peace seem heroic. Holding the mind to a subject is like holding a ship to its course. It implies constant change of place combined with unity of direction. The path of least resistance and least trouble is a mental rut already made. It requires troublesome work to undertake the alteration of old beliefs. In object lessons in elementary education and in laboratory instruction in higher education, the subject is often so treated that the student fails to see the forest on account of the trees. We cannot expect to gain true knowledge without acting upon our ideas. Only in this connection of knowledge and social action can education generate the understanding necessary for the continued existence of democracy. Intelligence converts desire into plans, systematic plans based on assembling facts, reporting events as they happen, keeping tab on them, and analyzing them. Philosophy recovers itself when it ceases to be a device for dealing with the problems of philosophers and becomes a method, cultivated by philosophers, for dealing with the problems of men. The vine of pedant theory is attached at both ends to the pillars of observed subject matter. Democracy has to be born anew every generation, and education is its midwife. Who can reckon up the loss of moral power that arises from the constant impression that nothing is worth doing in itself, but only as a preparation for something else, which in turn is only a getting ready for some genuinely serious end beyond? An intelligent home differs from an unintelligent one chiefly in that the habits of life and intercourse which prevail are chosen, or at least colored, by the thought of their bearing upon the development of children. Our daily associations cannot be trusted to make clear to the young the part played in our activities by remote physical energies and by invisible structures. Hence a special mode of social intercourse is instituted, the school, to care for such matters. Now in many cases, the activity of the immature human being is simply played upon to secure habits which are useful. He is trained like an animal rather than educated like a human being. As we have seen, there is some kind of continuity in any case, since every experience affects for better or worse the attitudes which help decide the quality of further experiences, by setting up certain preference and aversion, and making it easier or harder to act for this or that end. Conflict is the gadfly of thought. It stirs us to observation and memory. It instigates invention. It shocks us out of sheep-like passivity and sets us at noting and contriving. Conflict is a sine qua non of reflection and ingenuity. We're all instructors to realize that the quality of mental process, not the production of correct answers, is the measure of educative growth. Something hardly less than a revolution in teaching would be worked.